Okay, are you ready? Today's lesson is about neurons. So we talked about neurons in the introduction, but we're going to review it and then expand that information because this is going to lead into something else that we're doing. So what is the functional unit of the nervous system? Do you remember? Yeah, it's the neuron. So the neuron is the functional unit of the nervous system. They are the longest cells in your body. They transmit signals from a very slow 1.2 miles per hour to an amazingly fast 250 miles per hour. And we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain alone. What were those main types of neurons? So remember we had receptors in the skin. Let me pull this up. Receptors in the skin, a sensory neuron bringing a signal to an interneuron, and then the signal coming out a motor neuron to an effector. Remember again that from this we could also have a signal that is going up to brain as well. Okay, so that is going to be happening with most signals, not simply sent right back out. Okay, also going to the brain. But those things are going to happen at the same time. It's just going to be a little slower. So if we need to react fast, we're going to go this way. So sensory neurons. So they go from receptors to the spinal cord and brain. New word though here. Sensory neurons are called afferent. Right here, afferent. So this is the sensory nerve. See how it's picking up signals from the skin? So how the heck, because you can look ahead and see that we have efferent. Oh my goodness, how the heck can you remember the difference? Here's a hint. So affect is emotion, right? If you're showing affect, you're showing emotion. So you sense it, you feel it, okay? So that is meaning it comes from receptors. And then we have motor neurons, okay? Motor neurons are coming from the spinal cord, also from the brain to go to muscles or glands, okay? And that's right here, efferent. So how can you remember that? Well, if you don't remember the sensory hint, here's the hint for motor neurons. They cause an effect. They're efferent. They cause an effect. So we have sensory, which is afferent because affect, we feel it, we sense it. And efferent causes an effect like a muscle or a gland. And then we have interneurons. So interneurons, remember, are found in the central nervous system. That's the brain and the spinal cord. They make connections. So you can see a whole system here. Sensory neuron, that's afferent, going to the spinal cord. Remember, we also would have a signal going up to the brain as well. And then that little neuron here is interneuron, and then going out a motor neuron or an afferent neuron. All right, so what are the main parts of the neuron, a nerve cell? Okay. Well, in class we would watch this video, but let's go ahead. Okay. What is part A? Well, those are the dendrites. They pick up the signals. They receive it. They're the receivers. Those little tree-like branches, the receivers. What is B? B is the cell body or soma, and it holds most of the organelles. What is C? Well, that's the axon. It transmits the signals. What is D? Well, D is the Schwann cell, the myelin sheath. It insulates and protects the axon. What is E? And E is something I only briefly mentioned in the introduction. It is called the node of Ranvier, and it is a gap in that myelin sheath. And this is when the signal is being transmitted. Remember all these dendrites, they're picking up a signal. And multiple dendrites may pick up multiple signals, and then we're going to see, is it going to collectively be enough for the signal to be transmitted? If it is, it's going to start moving down the axon. But when a neuron is covered in myelin, it can skip the myelin sheath and just transmit the signal on those nodes of RANVA, which is what makes this signal happen so much faster. Okay, let's look at that. So here you can see this is the nucleus of a Schwann cell. Here you can see this is the myelin sheath. You can see how the axon is tucked inside of there. So first of all, it's protection, it's insulating, but it allows the signal to just boop, 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 go from node to node. Okay? And you can see how the myelin works. It's like layers that wrap around the axon. And here's that nucleus of the Schwann cell. And then what is F? Well, F is the axon terminal or terminal button. It contains those vesicles, those little sealed compartments inside the ends of the axon. And inside there we have neurotransmitters that are going to bring the signal to the next cell, or to the muscle, or to the gland. And then what is G? Well, G is the nucleus or control center. So let's review. What is myelin? Do you remember? We've talked about it a little bit already. It's that insulating layer, that sheath that surrounds many nerves, and it's produced by a specialized kind of glial cell called a Schwann cell. Why myelin? Well, do you remember? What does this show? This shows that a signal in a nerve travels much faster when there's myelin. Again, here's another example. You can see what happens. What I said, the signal just gets transmitted like boop, 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 node to node. When there's no myelin, the signal has to go all the way down the whole neuron, the whole axon. When there are nodes of RANVA, you can just go pop, 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 done. Okay, so you can see the nodes of RANVA, the myelin sheath allows nerves to transmit signals way faster. And thank goodness, because that's really what allows us to function for most things. But there are diseases that can affect myelin, and one is multiple sclerosis. And multiple sclerosis damages the myelin. So that means that the nerve cells can't send or receive signals properly. So it results in muscles weakening, coordination damaged. It can result in paralysis as well. So that's what's happening in multiple sclerosis. Where do neurons connect? Do you remember? Yeah, they connect at a synapse, right? So it's the I'm not touching. Right? So neurons don't actually touch. They get infinitely close, but it's like your annoying sibling or cousin or whatever. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Well, fair, you're not touching you, but you're ridiculously close. So then what happens is neurotransmitters cross that gap to carry the message to the next neuron or to the muscle or to the gland. So again, neurons do not touch. They don't touch the muscle. They don't touch the gland. They don't touch each other, but they get infinitely close. And that space is called the synapse, and neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that travel to carry the signal across that synapse. So again, neurotransmitters are what cross the synapse. So the signal comes down the neuron, comes down the axon, gets to the axon terminal. Neurotransmitters are released and carry the message to the next step. Is it a muscle? Is it a gland? Is it another neuron? Just depends. Now, here are some examples of neurotransmitters. Adrenaline, which you may be familiar with already, that's that fight or flight neurotransmitter. We have acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is one that is also released in the parasympathetic to calm down. Glutamate, that's a memory endorphins, euphoria. Now, it says dopamine is the pleasure transmitter. That's a little misleading, okay? Dopamine is what's part of our reward system. It allows us to learn, like continue to do the things that motivate us. But we need something like serotonin or endorphins to actually make us feel the pleasure, okay? So dopamine is really part of the reward system. And there we have it. That's neurons. I hope you learned something new today.